The April 14th, 2021 meeting of the Board of Zoning Appeals is now in session. Good evening and welcome to this meeting of the Arlington Board of Zoning Appeals, which is also known as the BZA. I am Inta Malice, Chair of the Board. The board is made up of 5 citizens appointed by the Circuit Court. In addition to myself, we have Vice Chair Paul Melnick and members Judy Freshman and Lindsay Arthurs. Ms. Clark is absent today. Also present is the professional staff, including Cliff Hogan, Acting Coordinator for the BZA, Mark Hamela, Zoning Technician, and Blake Bowen, Assistant Zoning Administrator. For the safety of our board members, county staff, and applicants and community members, we are in a virtual meeting today and all participants are joining remotely. We are legally authorized to hold this virtual meeting based on the governor's executive orders, legislation adopted by the Virginia General Assembly, and the Arlington County Board's Continuity of Operations Ordinance adopted in March of 2020. We thank you for being here and extend a warm welcome. Before we call our first case, I will share with you some general information about the Board of Zoning Appeals and then some ground rules on how we will conduct virtual meetings. The staff reports for each case on tonight's agenda can be found on the BZA website. Staff has placed a link to the agenda in the chat section of the session. If you have not seen the report for your case, you may wish to review it before your item is called. Staff has also placed a link in the chat for supplemental material received after the staff reports were prepared. The board's powers are prescribed in the Code of Virginia and are set out in further detail in the county's zoning ordinance adopted by the county board. The Board of Zoning Appeals does not have the power to rezone property or to amend the regulations set forth in the ordinance. That authority rests with the county board. This board does have authority to do 3 things. 1, we can approve use permits that allow modification of placement requirements for structures on 1 and 2 family lots where there is no option in the zoning ordinance to allow such modifications. 2, we can grant variances from the specific requirements of the zoning ordinance. And 3, we can decide appeals of the decision of the zoning administrator. When approving use permits, the Board of Zoning Appeals may impose conditions that it deems necessary in the public interest, including limiting the duration of the use permit. In order to approve a use permit, the law requires that the board find that the proposal meets certain conditions and that the use permit will not adversely affect the health or safety of persons residing in the neighborhood, will not be detrimental to the public welfare or injurious to property improvements in the neighborhood, and will not be in conflict with the purposes of the master plans and land use and zoning related policies of the county. To do this, the BZA shall consider whether the modification will promote compatibility of development within the surrounding neighborhood because the structure's overall footprint size and placement are similar to structures on properties surrounding the lot in question, and whether the modification will help preserve natural landform, historical features, and/or significant trees and foliage. When granting variances, the burden of proof is on the applicant to prove by a preponderance of the evidence that the improvements meet the following criteria. The strict application of zoning ordinance would unreasonably restrict the utilization of the property, or that granting the variance would alleviate a hardship due to a physical condition relating to the property or improvements thereon at the time of the effective date of the ordinance, or that the granting of the variance would alleviate a hardship by granting a reasonable modification to a property or improvement thereon requested by or on behalf of a person with a disability, and the property for which the variance is being requested was acquired in good faith and any hardship was not created by the applicant, that the variance granted will not be of substantial detriment to the adjacent property and nearby properties in the proximity of the geographic area, that the condition or situation of the property concerned is not so general or recurring a nature as to make reasonably practicable the adoption of an amendment to the ordinance, that the granting of the variance will not result in a use that is not otherwise permitted on the property or change the zoning classification of the property, and that the relief or remedy obtained through the variance is not available through a special exception process as provided for under the zoning and/or subdivision ordinance. When deciding appeals of the zoning administrator, the board must use its judgment to determine if the administrator was correct. The order of tonight's meeting is as follows. First, cases will be called and a brief staff report and recommendation will be given. Following that, board members will ask any questions of staff that they may have. Next, the applicant or their representative will be given an opportunity to make comments to support the application or appeal. Next, all speakers for the item will be called. After we hear from the speakers for and against the proposal, the board may permit the applicant a brief opportunity to clarify any points. The board may also ask questions of any speakers, but does not permit and will not condone any cross-examination or direct questioning by others. We have deemed the following time limits for applicants and speakers to be sufficient. 20 minutes for applicants of appeal, 5 minutes for applicants of use permits and variances, 3 minutes for speakers representing organizations, and 2 minutes for those speaking as individuals. After the board has gathered all the information they need and has discussed the case, it will decide the matter by voting on a motion duly made and seconded. A majority is needed to approve any motion. Any appeal from the decision of this board must be made to the circuit court in accordance with state law. After your case of interest is heard, you are welcome to stay for the balance of the session or leave at your convenience. Now I would like to orient everyone to our virtual environment and to cover a few specifics about how this evening's meeting will run. Tonight's meeting is available to stream from the county's website via a Microsoft Teams link. There's also a dial-in phone option for those who wish to use it. If board members, presenters, or speakers lose internet connectivity during tonight's meeting, please reconnect with us by phone. Please keep your phones and devices muted until you are called upon. Turn off any sound to any other devices around you to minimize interference. For guests joining us via Teams, please turn off your video feed. Only board members will leave their cameras on. When called upon to speak, please turn on your camera and unmute yourself by clicking on the microphone icon that is located on your meeting command bar. The moderator does not have the ability to unmute you. If you are dialing in by phone, press *6 to unmute. The meeting chat is active for presenters or board members who need technical assistance only. The meeting chat should not be used for discussion, public comment, questions about agenda items, or requests for more information. All public comments must be shared verbally for the record during the assigned public testimony period. If board members wish to be recognized, please seek recognition verbally as usual, or you may use the raised hand function. In either case, once you have been recognized, you may unmute yourself. All voting tonight will be taken via roll call. This is for applicants and public speakers. You will be called upon by county staff at an assigned time. Pre-registration to speak at tonight's hearing was requested. We will accommodate any additional speakers only if time permits. Public comment will take place within the time frame stated earlier, the same as we would provide in an in-person meeting. During public comment, a speaking timer will be displayed on the screen by staff. If you are dialing in by phone and unable to see the screen, we will provide an audible warning when 30 seconds are remaining. You will be muted when your time has concluded. Lastly, this is a public forum. Today's meeting will be recorded and posted to the county website. All information associated with today's meeting, whether written or spoken, is subject to the Freedom of Information Act requirements. This concludes my introductory remarks. Mr. Hogan, will you please call the first item?
And just to reiterate, for those of us who are joining, if you could please turn off your video and mute until your item is called, we would appreciate that. The first item is case number V-11639-21-UP-1, and it is use permit request by Mark Cooper on behalf of Sharon Hughes and Catherine DiGiacomo, the owners, to permit a street setback of 18.5 feet from the front porch, 18.2 feet to the eave, instead of 21 feet to the front porch, 19.5 feet to the eave, as required from the North Upton Street. This is concerning a new front porch on an existing one-family dwelling in the R6 zoning district. The premises is known as 2017 North Upton Street, and it is in the Waverly Hills Civic Association. Staff recommends that the board adopt the attached proposed resolution granting the use permit with conditions.
Thank you, Mr. Hogan. Mr. Indovina, could you turn off your camera? Do your best. Any questions for staff? No questions for staff. Is Mr. Coupard here on behalf of the applicants?
Yes, I am.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Is there anything you'd like to say on behalf of your application?
No, just that I read the review and I'm obviously in agreement with it, and I just want to say that my clients are new to the neighborhood and they want to do something that fits in the neighborhood, and they've asked for something that is pretty modest by comparison to some of the things in the neighborhood, and I think it fits well, and I hope you agree.
Thank you. Any questions for the applicant? Mr. Coupard, did you receive a letter asking about the rear neighbor to the site?
I did, and my clients responded to that, and they did attempt to contact them and didn't hear anything from them. So that effort was made, and I believe they sent an email to that effect to staff. Mr.
Hogan, did you get that email?
Yes, we did. It should be in the supplemental materials.
Okay.
Although, I think that may have been missed. But yeah, I can confirm there was an email received, and I think it just may not have made its way into the supplemental materials. I can provide it to you.
You can put it into chat.
As part of the record.
Okay. Thank you. Mm-hmm. Any other questions for the applicant? That was the only question that I saw on the application, as far as procedural. Ms. Freshman.
If there are no speakers, I'm prepared to make a motion.
Yeah, good point. Are there any speakers? Go ahead, Ms. Freshman.
I move the Board of Zoning Appeals adopt the attached proposed resolution approving the use permit V-11639-21-UP1, subject to the conditions listed in the proposed resolution and with the addition of the 3-year time limit.
Okay.
Is that Mr. Melnick?
Yeah.
Thank you. Any further discussion? I will call the roll. Mr. Melnick?
Aye.
Ms. Freshman?
Aye.
Ms. Arthurs?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion to grant the use permit passes on a vote of 4-0. Thank you very much, Mr. Coupard.
Thank you very much, and good evening.
Good evening. Mr. Hogan, would you call the next item, please?
Yes. The next case is case number V-11640-21-UP-1, and is a use permit request by Katie Hagerman on behalf of James Cody Williams and Megan McKnight, the owners, to permit a right side setback of 5.1 feet to the wall of a rear addition, 4.1 feet to the new second story eaves and eaves on the rear of the addition, instead of 8 feet to the wall, 5 feet to the eave as required, and to permit a right side setback of 1.7 feet to each window well instead of 5 feet as required, all from the right side property line, regarding a new second story addition with new eaves, a rear 2-story addition with basement, rear screen porch, rear deck, and 2 new right side window wells on an existing 1-family dwelling in the R6 zoning district on the premises known as 4627 5th Street South. The staff recommendation is to adopt the attached proposed resolution, partially approving and partially denying the use permit request with conditions. Alternative resolutions have been provided should BZA see fit to approve the case as advertised.
Thank you, Mr. Hogan. Any questions for staff? Ms. Freshman, I know you have your hand up.
Yes,
Old
I
hand, new hand. Go
I
ahead.
do, that raised hand. My question is if, regarding the window wells, if they're required for egress from the basement, and if so, what would staff propose for the alternative if the request is not being recommended for approval?
They would, they would have to provide an alternative location for them to, they would need to provide an alternative location so that they could build the window well so it meets the requirements of the building code. I'm afraid I don't have a suggestion of where to relocate them. That's what you're asking.
Okay.
Any other questions for staff? Mr. Hogan, I guess the question, it's sort of a, theoretical perennial question is, how close to a property line can we put a window well before it's completely unreasonable?
Under the zoning ordinance, pretty much they're like the hard stop for most buildings and structures as far as setback from lot lines or street right of ways is 1 foot, the exception being fences, which are allowed up to the property line. But in general, there's really nothing in the zoning ordinance other than fences that is permitted to be closer than 1 foot to the property line. And that's really for accessory buildings meeting certain dimensional standards, locating in the rear yard and single family, so it's that's really the only guidance we have in the zoning ordinance as far as, what's acceptable. And beyond that, it's really just a matter for staff to make the case for or against. I believe in this case, I think Mr. Rissy, who drafted the staff report, may have had some concerns about going into the 5 foot setback, the 5 foot limit setback for window wells, perhaps because of the fear of encroaching or trespassing into the neighboring property. But but yeah, there's really no 1 foot is is pretty much a hard no for us, regardless of what it is.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Melnick?
So I too had some questions about the window wells, and I was thinking that the applicant might be able to address them, because sometimes we see the specs, for a window well, and I've seen some window wells that have covers, some that are actually very durable covers that can be walked over. And I didn't know, I was going to address this with the applicant, but also with staff. It would seem to me if there were specifications, they would have been in our package, but I just wanted to make sure that no specifications of the window wells were submitted. Mr. Hogan, is that true?
I do not see any specifications submitted.
Okay.
I don't see anything in our package.
Okay.
It says that there's a timber enclosure, but that's it.
Okay. So I can bring that up later with the applicant.
Okay.
If I read this correctly, guys, it's on page 19. I might be wrong here. Maybe the applicant can provide some more detail.
We will get to that. Unfortunately, when we look at hard copies, we don't have page numbers, so
Sorry.
you have to give us a hint.
Let's see. It's the basement plan of the drawings by Fisher Group.
Got it.
Cool.
Got it. All right. Well, if there are no more questions, let's hear from from Mr. Williams and Ms. McKnight. Would you like to speak to your application?
Hi, good evening. Can you hear us?
Yes, we hear you fine.
Perfect.
Hear
thank
you and see you.
I don't know. I guess I don't think we have any additional questions.
Do we need to address the window well issue and our plan for that, or?
Yeah, well, if you have nothing else you want to say about your application, you could address the question of the window wells, their location, and any further specifications that you have on them.
Sure. So as I think someone mentioned previously, yes, the purpose of those window wells is purely egress. That particular side of the house is it's actually not really accessible or utilized in any way. So we didn't really think it would be that much of an issue, just once again, kind of for lack of use by both neighbors, us and our current neighbors. Also, too, I wasn't sure, just in regards to the application process, I think there was some initial kind of difficulties in getting our neighborhood outreach submitted with the initial package. And I'm not sure if that would have any impact on staff recommendation or would change anything, but just wanted to add that as a note.
I'm looking at your application and I think it's quite complete as far as neighborhood outreach goes.
Yes, it was actually sent in like after the fact, like after we had received a copy of the initial staff recommendation. And then the initial one said like no neighborhood outreach was received at the time. So then we put it through, and I wasn't sure once again if that had any weight for the staff.
That is not your neighborhood. Your neighbors seem to support your application, so that is not the issue with the window. The window well is as staff outlined in their. I think they outlined it in their analysis. There's certain safety issues and access issues when the window well is that close to the property line.
Certainly.
So one question I think was raised was, would there be any covering on the window well? Or could there be any covering on the window well?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Admittedly, we haven't explored, exactly what it would entail or, look like, or any of the specifications. I think it was just more, kind of carving a space for it. And then, any recommendations that the board or staff may have, we're certainly open and willing to.
Okay. I see that Miss Hageman has her hand up, and I believe she is your agent.
Yes.
Ms. Hageman?
Sure.
All right, go ahead. Could we?
Yes, hi. I'm.
You're not Katie.
I'm
No,
not
this is my
kidding.
boss.
This is Ken Fisher.
Okay,
And when we designed the window wells, the code requires a 3-foot clearance from the wall out. And these were rather simple. They don't have to be terribly deep. And they're designed with 6x6 timbers. So they would, to Mr. Melnick's observation, they would very, very easily support some kind of cover that you could walk upon. And that was the thing that came to my mind when I read the report and how are we going to address this, is that, well, then if we had something of that nature, we could walk upon that, and that would sort of minimize the impact on the boundary line and the proximity to the boundary line. And once again, back to your initial question, it is, and as Cody mentioned, it is primarily for egress.
okay. If we were to condition that to be covered, would you have a problem?
Not at all.
Okay. Mr. Melnick?
Thanks. So if we were to make this a condition, so this is a question to the agent of the applicant. How would we properly describe coverage, in order to accurately describe what you envision upon, as far as like a cover you can walk over? Is there a term that we could use to describe the covers?
It's a really good question. I probably would have to go to our architect and ask what, in architectural terms, what I'm imagining is some kind of a somewhat heavy-duty grate that you could step upon. It's only a span of 4 feet there. We see these in kind of commercial applications, but I don't really have a name for something like that. Aside from a walkable grate, you might call it.
Or weight bearing?
Pardon?
Weight bearing?
A weight bearing grate, G-R-A-T-E, sure.
I think we could describe the idea.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's really the only question I had.
Yeah, is there anyone else here wishing to speak on this application? No. Okay. All right, discussions with the board. While we're thinking about it, I do compliment you on, I don't know if you had it all together at the time, but you have a pretty thorough application as far as neighborhood outreach goes.
Yay.
One of you was responsible for that, right? Is Mr. Melnick, are you putting together some language?
He's on mute.
Right.
No.
Oh, I'm just trying to adequately determine, just to describe, because we were talking about weight bearing, covers that are weight bearing, but, the question is how much weight and how would that be described?
What if you just said walkable? which implies that it has to be enough for people to walk on it.
Mm-hmm. Let's see. Let's see.
Can I bring up one little point about the window wells before we totally move on?
Sure.
Did anyone notice that the window well that's further back in the house there's a fence that runs right alongside it on the other property line, which I know doesn't impact this one, but if they're 1.7 feet from the property line and that fence is 1.6 feet off, that kind of makes it difficult to actually egress from there. And if there's a grate on top of it, how is the person going to egress from there?
So whose fence is, this question of the applicant, whose fence is that?
That's the neighbor's fence.
The
Yeah,
neighbor's,
it's on the neighbor's lot line.
it's definitely on the neighbor's lot line.
And if I recall correctly, I actually don't believe the fence runs as far as the, or maybe once we have.
It looks like it's like halfway through it or a quarter of the way through it. Just looks like it would be enough that it might not even be a problem.
Yeah, you could put a hand up.
Okay.
Mr. Fisher, were you seeking recognition?
Yes, one other thing, I have seen some commercially available window wells that do include a grate that is made to bear a weight-bearing grate. It is made to be walked upon. And so I'm just wondering about when we make a building permit application, we could specify something of that nature.
Yeah.
And, yes, and I believe I don't know how they open, to be honest with you. But they must open. It's hinged or something. They have.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Madam Chair,
Mr. Melnick.
I think I've come up with language, and I don't know if you want me just to state what I'm thinking about for language about the window wells, or just make the motion.
Well, you can describe what you're thinking,
Okay,
and
so I'm
discuss it.
thinking of saying the egress window wells will be covered with grates sufficient, let's see, sufficient to support human foot traffic.
How's that sound to everyone?
Good to us.
Do you have to include that they can be removed from the basement?
Or opened? Yeah.
Yes.
Now, maybe that's required in the course of
Yeah, I
inspections
would.
and whatnot.
Yeah.
Operable? Operable egress covers?
Yes.
Would be covered with grates, openable.
Operable.
You know, I don't know if openable is a word.
I don't think so.
Operable.
Polly's saying operable.
Operable egress
Great.
grates. Operable egress grates.
Removable.
I think operable, because you're just going to probably, as Mr. Fisher says, there's going to be a hinge that you push them open.
You should be operable, but we're not really saying, you know, what is the operation though with that. Just saying that, but.
Well, I think, Madam
Operable
Chair,
for egress.
yeah, I think the point is that the inspectors are going to, this is probably not the first time in the universe that a window well that required for egress had to be covered. And yet obviously has to be removable in an emergency.
How about saying at the end, yet allow for egress?
Okay.
Sure.
Emergency.
So the way that set is, the egress window wells will be covered with grade sufficient to support human foot traffic, comma, yet allow for egress.
That's good.
Okay. All right, so that could be like condition 1 on the motion I can make.
That's going to be condition 4.
Okay. Well, I was trying to figure out, because we've said, let's see.
It can be added to number 1
Oh,
Yeah.
because it references all the drawings.
okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I'd make it, like, I could add it to the end of paragraph 1.
Yeah.
All right, because, you know, the pictures don't really show any such thing, but we're just clarifying. Everybody okay with that? Okay.
Mhm.
Well, so I'm prepared to make a motion then. You
Okay,
ready?
Mr. Melnick, yes.
Okay, so in case Z1164021UP1, I move that the Arlington County Board of Zoning Appeals adopt the attached proposed resolution.
Alternate resolution?
Yeah, so I'm sorry. Yes, to adopt the alternative resolution, approval as advertised, with the conditions as stated. However, adding to the end as the last sentence of paragraph 1 to state the egress window wells will be covered with grates sufficient to support human foot traffic, comma, yet allow for egress. And then I'd also add a condition 4, you know, with a 3-year time period discussed previously.
Yeah, that's a 3-year expiration on the use permit, so you would have to
Yeah.
act on your use permit within 3 years. Is there a second? Ms.
Second.
Freshman? All right. Does everybody understand the motion?
Yes.
Okay. All right, I will call the roll. Mr. Melnick,
Aye.
Ms. Freshman,
Aye.
Ms. Clark, I'm sorry, Ms. Arthurs.
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion to adopt to grant the use permit has been granted. The use permit as advertised has been granted. So that's it.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Good luck
Yay.
with your project.
Thank you so much.
Mr. Hogan, will you call the next item, please?
Yes. The next item is case number V-11641-21-UP-1. It is a use permit request by Young and Michelle Lee, the owners, to permit a right side setback of 10.5 feet from the wall from the side property line instead of 16 feet as required, and to permit an aggregate side yard 19.2 feet instead of 24 feet as required in the R10 zoning district. This is concerning the conversion of an existing carport and conversion of an existing carport into a garage on an existing one-family dwelling in the R10 zoning district. The premises is known as 5631 31st Street North. Staff's recommendation is to adopt the attached resolution, the attached proposed resolution granting the use permit request with conditions.
Thank you, Mr. Hogan. Any questions for staff?
Madam Chair, I do.
Mr. Melnick?
Okay, so I know we're working with the new application. And so what I wanted to clarify on applicant, because I see applicant name Young Lee, and then I see the other applicant, Michelle Lee, but she's listed as a contact. You know, I just wanted to point that out, whether that's really meant to show Michelle as an applicant. So I just wanted, you know, to clarify that. And also on the disclosure, it looks like the second signature, it's a name that starts with a J for a last name. And I didn't know who that was. because Youngley is mentioned in the notary, but not Michelle. Those are what I wanted to point out, just for clarification. So if staff can address that, whether Michelle actually on the county records here is named as an applicant.
So the way the new permitting system works is the person who's submitting the application would fill out, basically when they're filling out their contact information, they would kind of identify themselves as applicant, owner, agent for owner, whatever role they're in. And then there's also an option to put additional contacts in there. As far as the property owner information, that's pulled directly from the real estate assessments from the county's GIS data. So as far as this application, we would, we've treated it as, the applicants are the owners, Young and Michelle Lee.
Okay. Is there any telling who the second signature is on the disclosure statement?
I'm
sorry, what is your question, Mr.? On the second applicant's signature, you're asking who that is?
Yeah, it looks like it starts with a J.
Well, Michelle's middle initial is J.
Yeah, I think it's Michelle J. Lee, and the first one is Young.
Okay, I was just having trouble reading it. So,
but
okay.
Mr. Melnick, no, I'm glad you raised it. If the system is called, and for the applicants, just so the applicant knows, this is not any prejudice to your application. It's just that we're trying to understand the new system. Wouldn't Michelle Lee's name have been pulled if she was the co-owner?
Yeah, it really depends on how it's recorded in the land records. I believe the property. Sorry, I'm just trying to think. I'm familiar with the back end, but not the front end that people see when they're applying. So
I'm trying to look it up in land records right now because I have access,
okay,
but
great.
There's a lot.
Yeah, I mean, and I guess just this is kind of this sheet, this application use permit kind of summary is something that the developers put together. We asked them to kind of like put together some kind of application that we can present. It's we can definitely make changes related to it, but yeah, it's just a matter of, it's a matter of.
Oh, Mr. Rissy has his hand up. Would you really want to jump in, Mr. Rissy?
Yeah, I'll jump in here. So if you notice on the report, Michelle Lee is actually listed as a contact, but the contact type is additional owner. So they did identify her as the additional owner on the property. And then the property owner information, which Cliff says does get pulled from the GIS. When they're filling out the application, they have the ability to assign a first and last name, because the way that it pulls it from the GIS, it isn't always clearly decipherable. And so that's why you're just seeing Young Lee listed as the property owner, because that's the first and last name that they entered as the property owner contact. And so that's why it's presented that way.
All right. Guess we're just going to have to figure this out as we go along, huh? Ms. Freshman?
Yeah, I just, it appears that this is very near completion, and I wondered if that's just a matter of confidence or whether there was some issue raised in connection with the a permit or something, why we're seeing it.
I don't know that this, I'm not certain whether or not they had already pulled their building permits and this was caught by a plan reviewer. And
well, usually that kind of information is included And given how far along the work is, that's why I wondered whether or not there was a flag raised or if it's just that they're moving very swiftly in hopes of an approval.
I think we can ask them that question.
Okay.
Yes.
If you don't know, Mr. Hogan.
I do not know.
Okay.
Sorry.
All right. Are the Lees with us tonight?
Yes, my name's Young Lee, and I'm
Oh,
here.
Welcome. Good evening.
Thank you.
Were you following the discussion?
Yes, and so Michelle Lee is my wife, and she is the co-owner. And then for the signature, when she signs, she always signs with her middle name, which is why the J comes out. There is a Lee at the end of the signature,
Got
but
it.
she always signs with her first, middle, and last name.
Got it. Ms. Freshman, so is there anything you'd like to add to your application?
No, I think I read your staff proposal, and thank you for recommending that it be approved. For building and zone, everything was accepted under the reviewer. It's only the zoning that was where it didn't pass, which is why we're applying for the use permit.
So you had a permit, a building permit already pulled?
Yes,
And
yes,
started construction?
yes. And then we started the top, but then we decided to change the lower structure from a metal frame to a garage. And so we stopped, and then we created a edit to the application asking for it to be a garage. That's when the building permit the building review committee passed the structural part, but not the zoning part when they went to zoning review.
So does that answer your question, Ms. Freshman? Yeah, so there was a change in the plan after the building permit was pulled. All right. Any other questions for the applicant? Is there anyone else here that wishes to speak on this application? I have no other questions on the application. Oops. So the discussions with the board, Ms. Freshman,
I'm prepared to make a motion.
please.
I move the Board of Zoning Appeals approve the attached proposed resolution approving use permit V-11641-21-UP-1, subject to the conditions listed. I'm not sure, it's a single condition. I'm not sure, given the status of the project, that we need to say it needs to be completed in 3 years. I'll let you all decide.
I think it's usually that the building permit is pulled within 3 years, so that's been done.
Right then. So it just has one condition.
Right.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Mr. Melnick?
oh, I have a question, but would the building permit need to be amended? And do we need to allow time for that due to the change? You know, just it does, you know, it would seem to me something different would happen with the building permit, so maybe we should have the limitation if that's the case.
I mean, I have no objection to adding it, but I think that's.
Yeah, we can add it. I mean, maybe they've already changed that part of it. We don't know, but yes, sure. So go ahead and add that as condition, second condition.
Is there unanimous consent to add that to the motion? Is there any objection?
No.
No objection. So
Was there a second?
no, well, that's just unanimous consent for Mr. Melnick's motion, but we do need a second for his motion. Is there a second? Oh,
I made the motion.
I'll second whatever you guys want. I'm good. I like all of it.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Arthurs. Is there any further discussion? I will call the roll. Mr. Melnick,
Aye.
Ms. Freshman,
Aye.
Ms. Arthurs,
Aye.
chair votes aye. Motion to grant the use permit was approved 4-0. Thank you very much, Mr. Lee. Enjoy your project.
Thank you very much. And I guess I'll get further information afterwards about how to reapply if I can just go straight to zoning review.
Yes, please check with zoning staff on the next steps.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. Hogan, oops. Would you call the next item, please?
The next case is case number D-11642-21-UP-1. It is a use permit request by Robert P. Williams and Katie W. Williams, the owners, to permit a setback of 24.2 feet to the wall instead of 25 feet to the wall as required from the 38th Street North right-of-way. To permit a right side setback of 16.4 feet to the wall of the addition, 14.9 feet to the eave of the addition, and 13.1 feet to the porch, and 12.1 feet to the porch eave instead of 18.5 feet to the wall and porch as required from the right side lot line. To permit a left side setback of 5.5 feet to the porch and 4 feet to the eave of the second story instead of 8 feet to the porch and 5 feet to the eave as required from the left side lot line, and to permit an aggregate side yard of 18.6 feet instead of 24 feet as required in the R10 zoning district. This is concerning a new wraparound front porch and a second story addition to a one-family dwelling in the R10 zoning district. And the premises is known as 4452 38th Street North. Staff recommendation is to adopt the attached proposed resolution granting the use permit request with conditions.
All right, any questions of staff?
Madam Chair.
Mr. Melnick.
Okay, so along the same lines as the other discussion about the new the new sheet for the application. So on this, the only one I'm seeing at all having to do with owner is Robert Williams. So Katie Williams is not even mentioned on this sheet. So I just wanted to bring that up, that, you know, if somehow she is just hidden from view, because she did, it appears she signed off on the disclosure statement, but like the letter, it doesn't have a signature either. So, you know, I don't know if she is in this meeting, but, you know, but I'd like to hear from staff about, you know, because we definitely need owners, you know, in some manner to appear on the application. So I just thought I'd point that out. But is she, what happened there, and is she noted, you know, somewhere in this application, except for in the disclosure statement?
Okay, any other questions of staff? We'll get to your question when we call the applicant.
Okay.
We'll see. All right, is Mr. or Ms. Williams with us this evening?
Yes, good evening. This is Robert Williams.
Hi, this is Katie Williams.
Good evening. Have you turned on your camera? There you are.
Yes, yes.
Good evening.
Hi.
Is there anything you'd like to add to your application?
I would just say that we've reviewed the staff report and we agree with it, and we appreciate the recommendation that the use permit be granted. We've done a significant amount of neighbor outreach and have the support of neighbors on all sides, and I think we submitted 18 letters of support in total. So
Yes.
appreciate the board's consideration.
We appreciate the effort you took to contact your neighbors. Mr. Malik, did you want to ask a question?
Yeah, I just, with Katie at our meeting, if she can just confirm that she's in agreement and consent to the application, just for the record.
Yes, for the record, Rob has handled most of the application, but I give full consent, and the application is, I give my full consent.
Okay. That's fine.
Thank you, Ms. Williams. Any other questions for the applicant? I have one. Your next door neighbor, and I'm going to find their name, gave you conditional support. That's your neighbor at 4456. I think that's your right facing your house. That's your neighbor to the right.
Yes.
But they have made a request that there be temporary fencing along the side in front of their property during construction. Are you aware of that request?
Yes, we've discussed that with them, and we're happy to do it.
All right. If that was a condition of this approval, would that be a problem?
No, we wouldn't have any problem doing that. They just, I think when the previous owners of our house did some work, the neighbors next door felt like some of the workers were kind of parking their vans and stepping on their front yard, so they didn't want a repeat of that. So we're happy to put up, some of that silt fencing or something, just so people aren't stepping on their yard.
Okay, so did you have a discussion of what kind of temporary fencing your neighbor was looking for?
I think they said they would be satisfied with that, temporary silt fencing, or even like the orange snow fencing.
Okay, so we're not talking about heavy duty concrete and wire fencing.
Oh, no, they just wanted people to be aware that they shouldn't be walking across their yard.
More visual.
Okay. All right, thank you. Is there anyone here that wishes to speak on this application? All right, the discussions with the board. Does Ms. Freshman?
If there's general agreement on on adding the fencing to as a condition, I can make a motion.
Yeah, I think since it is a next door neighbor, and it's just would be helpful to just document the agreement.
Okay. I move the Board of Zoning Appeals approve the attached proposed resolution approving use permit V-11642-21-UP1, subject to the conditions listed, with the following two conditions. The first being that the applicant will install temporary fencing between their property and 4456 North 38th Street during construction, and that the project will proceed within the 3-year time limit.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, motion is made by Ms. Freshman, seconded by Mr. Melnick. Is there further discussion? I will call the roll. Mr. Melnick?
Aye.
Ms. Freshman?
Aye.
Ms. Arthurs?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion to grant the proposed resolution granting the use permit carries 4-0. Good luck with your project.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a great evening.
You too. Good night.
Bye.
Mr. Hogan, would you call the next item, please?
Yes. The next item is case number V-11643-21-UP-1. It is a use permit request by Michael Stephenson on behalf of Robert Konigsberg, the owner, to permit a right side setback of 8.4 feet to the wall instead of 10 feet as required from the side property line, and permit an aggregate side yard setback of 16.8 feet instead of 18 feet as required in the R6 zoning district. This is concerning a side addition to a one-family dwelling in the R6 zoning district, and the premises is known as 4505 15th Street North. The staff recommendation is to adopt the attached proposed resolution granting the use permit request with conditions.
Thank you, Mr. Hogan. Any questions for staff?
Madam Chair, I do.
Mr. Melnick?
Okay, couple things. So again, in line with the new cover sheet, this time there's nobody named as applicant or property owner. So I just point that out because I don't know how you'd think that the system would have made them add something there. So I was puzzled by that. So that's like the first issue. And then the second issue is I noticed that the only thing being requested is the side setback of 8.4 feet to a wall. But then I noticed on the survey that they're actually saying roof eave is to be 7.4 feet. And I didn't see anything about the eave. Because it would seem like we'd need to approve the eave since it's going to be even closer. So just off the bat, I thought I'd ask, whether this thing really needs to include that. And then just as like a editorial, it looks like under applicant, I just pointed out that the name, Stefano looks like it ought to be Stefanum. So those are my comments for staff. Any questions?
Yeah, I had the same question on the eve, Mr. Hogan.
Look at the plan.
Stephen,
Mr. Rissy.
Yes, the wall is required to be at 10 feet from the property line. Eaves are given a 4-foot encroachment, which means the eaves can be as close as 6 feet to the property line. And so this eave would be in a by right location.
can I ask Stephen a question too?
Certainly.
Sure.
I know that we're struggling with the new online system, but how is it that an application can come in and the system doesn't automatically block it from proceeding if they leave the applicant name and property owner name blank?
So I can answer that. They're actually being filled in automatically with the property information when the application is filed. It's just the way this report pulls information. It specifically pulls the information from the fields for first and last name that applicants can enter to clarify who the property owner is. So it's really more just a quirk of the way the report works rather than what they're putting in and where it's being pulled from.
Well, I guess my comment is, since it comes up frequently, I would hope that some technical person can figure out a way to address that.
We've already put in a request for them to change where they're pulling.
Okay.
So that it pulls the information that's generated by the county's real estate records.
Okay.
I don't know whether that change will happen quickly. So I think in the interim, we just need to do a better job of working with applicants to make sure that the first and last name fields are always filled out.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, so Stephen,
Yeah.
Would you would see this application, this report, right?
Yes.
Would you see it in time to go back to the applicant and have them make those changes?
We can. Yeah, I mean, we can generate this report in theory anytime after they've submitted the application. Typically, we don't do it until we're putting the reports together for the board meeting, so kind of late in the process. But yeah, we just need to make it a point to check the contact information when it's coming in and ensure that there's always names in the first and last name field.
Okay, because this happened to be one that Patty flagged, our assistant.
Mhm.
And I don't know if the fact that she flagged it had resulted in any change. And I was wondering, is that just because of the late timing of it?
Oh, I'm sure in this case that's just because the report had already been generated.
Okay.
So they may have changed it in the system after Patty identified it, and it's just the case that we had already generated this report. And so it's possible that if we generated this report now, that information would be there. I just can't say because I don't know if they made changes or when those changes were made.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Stephen.
Yeah.
I hope, do you get overtime pay when you're attending during vacation?
I'll have to ask my supervisor when I get back.
All right. We really appreciate your jumping in. Let's, if there's no more questions for staff, let's hear from the applicant. Is Mr. Stefano here?
Hello, good evening. This is Michael Stefanon, and thank you all for your time this evening.
All right. Good evening, Mr. Stefano. Is there anything you'd like to add to your application?
Not necessarily, but I think it might assist in the last point or the topic with the application field for the applicant name and so forth. I was contacted by Patricia, I believe on Monday, that application field for the applicant name was not filled in. And so I had submitted the additional information in a request as well with a reply email that I wasn't able to access the application to do it myself. And I requested direction on how to do that. And I think that things were just moving a little faster than what the feedback was. So I'm sorry for that.
No, that's, I think this is, I think we're working with a new system here, and there's just some bugs in it that we have to work out. So appreciate your jumping in to help.
You're welcome.
Do you have anything else to add on your application?
I don't believe so. I appreciate the recommendation, and I hope that this will be favorable. I know that the family's very excited for what the possibilities of this addition will be for them. Thank you.
Any questions for the applicant? I had just one clarification. You did your drawings that you submitted, the plat where you marked up what the change would look like, did have a note that there were two window wells, two bay windows on the left side of your house, but that note says that you are not proposing to include those at this time. Is that correct?
Yes, our biggest concern or request was to have the ability to change the dimension of the house for that addition, and we felt that there was a possibility that we potentially could be denied by adding the window wells in at this time. So in the better interest of the family, so that we would be able to assist them with this addition, we did not include that in this particular application.
All right. So that's just so it's clear to everybody, even though they're drawn in here, they are not part of the application. Mr. Hogan, I don't see dimensions here. Would they have required relief from the BZA?
It would depend on if there's floor area in the bay windows. I think there was, the section showed that I believe there are there was like a cross section that was included that showed that it was. So yeah, he would have, like, we would have counted that as well, actually, no, it wouldn't, because it's like the main issue on the left hand side is they're meeting the setback. It's just not the aggregate from the two side yards. So, and I don't think the bay window would reduce the aggregate.
All right, I just want to make sure that we're all clear on what we're approving. We're not approving the bay windows, correct?
Well, excuse me, if I may interject, there was only just one. There is one that is there.
Oh, one existing, I see.
Yes, where the word bay is existing, and then there was one more forward toward 15th Street that would have been the proposed window.
Got it. All right, so because one of your signers, your supporters, also made the note that they were only signing for the right side.
Yes, and that was Mr. Wilson, and that was the main reason why we altered the language, because he owns the property adjacent that he has renters in. He does not live there, but he was not favorable for that window.
Okay. Okay. Just so that's in the record.
Thank you.
Thank you. It's quite an alley you have in the back. It's quite rustic.
Madam Chair,
Mr. Melnick.
just so I can be sure, because I was under the original impression that the bay window is a matter of right. But where was it altered? You know, to remove the bay window.
No, it's not being, there's a second bay window was drawn in on the plat.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I see the second one, because I was just thinking that, so in other words, you know, are we gonna, okay, because I was, okay, well, so that, and so are we gonna explicitly exclude it then, if we approve this? It sounds like.
Yeah, we can explicitly just clarify that it's the drawing with only the improvements on the east side, or we can specifically say that bay window is not included.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Is there language in this application or in the staff report where that was deleted? You know, is there something where it's either crossed out or not put in? Is there anything like that? Because I was just looking for where that happened.
No, so it's not referred to in the application at all.
Okay.
It's just shown on the plat.
Mm-hmm.
With a note saying that it's future construction.
Okay, that's fine. Okay, thank you.
All right, so if there's no more questions for the applicant and there's no speakers, that be discussions with the board. So we would want to say, add to the first condition that bay window on west side.
Madam Chair?
Yes, Mr. Melnick?
Maybe we could say something, for instance, like in the first condition after April 9, 2021, like excluding the bay window on the western side of the dwelling.
Okay,
And it's kind of tricky because it's not even labeled. It says proposed city excluding proposed bay window on the western side. Let's see. Bay window. You want me to say what I was thinking?
sure. Do you want to make a motion?
Okay. So, Madam Chair.
Yes, Mr. Melnick. Are you frozen?
You know, I just got, ejected from the meeting, and now I'm back again, but I can't get video on. So
We see
but,
you. You don't see us?
No, well, I see you. However, the little video thing has a little cross through it. So anyway, as long as it looks normal. But I came up with language, for the motion. So do you want me to go ahead and state the motion?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. All right. So I move that the Board of Zoning Appeals in case Z1164321 UT1, in that case that we move, the Board of Zoning Appeals approves the proposed resolution granting the use permit with the conditions as stated, and that the condition number 1 be modified to state where it states April 9, 2001, comma, that it says excluding the proposed bay window on the western side of the dwelling, comma, and then it continues on as it's written, and that it also has the 3-year time period that we had discussed.
All right. Is there a second to that motion?
I second.
Second motion made by Mr. Melnick, seconded by Ms. Arthurs. Is there any further discussion? I will call the roll. Mr. Melnick?
Aye.
Ms. Frenchman?
Aye.
Ms. Arthurs?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Mr. Stefano, your use permit is granted.
Thank you, everybody.
You enjoy your project. It's really tucked in there, isn't it?
It is. And I appreciate the level of effort that you put in for such a modest request. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
You're welcome.
Mr. Hogan, will you call the next item, please?
The next item is case number V-1164-21-UP-2. It is a use permit request by Batisa Hassanzada Babahani, the owner, to permit after the fact approval for a street setback of 6.25 feet from the wall, 4.75 feet to the E, to an accessory structure, a shed, instead of 25 feet to the wall, 21 feet to the E, as required from the 24th Street South right-of-way. This is concerning a previously constructed shed in the R10 zoning district. The premises is known as 2345 South Ode Street. The staff recommendation is to adopt the attached proposed resolution denying the use permit request. Staff has also provided 2 alternative resolutions and conditions should the BZA see fit to approve the application is advertised or with a 10-foot setback. I'll also note that there have been supplemental materials that have been provided ahead of the meeting, and they're available online, and I can also put them into the chat if needed.
Yes. So the supplemental materials, could you describe what you received?
We received 2, it was an agent authorization letter on behalf of the property owner and applicant for her son, Aryan Hosseini, to serve as agent on her behalf and speak for her at the meeting. There was a statement provided by Aryan Hosseini about describing his neighbor outreach in relation to this project, including reaching out to 1409 South 24th Street and to the Oak Ridge Elementary School located across the street at 1414 South 24th Street. And there was also a letter objecting to the project from Erica Hu and Dennis Hu reside at 2344 South Ode Street. And they have, it's a approximately a 6-page letter detailing their objections to the board granting this use permit.
Thank you, Mr. Hogan. Ms. Freshman.
Given that this project was rejected 8 months ago by the BZA, can you give us sort of a brief summary of why it's back?
So, so this is essentially a brand new separate use permit request. There is there's really nothing in the Code of Virginia or the zoning ordinance which prohibits somebody from submitting a second application, whether it can be for the exact same thing. You know, so like this is a new use permit. This isn't an appeal. Back in August, when the board denied the previous use permit request, they did not avail themselves of the opportunity to appeal this to the circuit court. Instead, they decided they were going to ask again to see if they could make changes to their to the property. I believe this one, they've removed the gazebo and moved the accessory building to, and they submitted a new request under this. So, again, we don't really have any, like we're obliged under the code because it's not really prohibited. So that's why this is before you again.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Hogan, when their use permit was denied, what enforcement action took place?
The enforcement staff at that point basically allowed the applicants 30 days to file an appeal with the circuit court, or to remedy the situation by removing the structures. At the end of 30 days, they went out and they, the applicants hadn't availed themselves of an appeal to circuit court, nor had they removed the structures. So a citation, a ticket was written, I think for the amount of $200. At that point, the applicants were going to appeal the ticket, but they would be appealing the ticket to you, and basically you would have to decide whether or not we had acted correctly under the zoning ordinance, and which is fruitless. So my understanding is that they've decided to make some changes to their to the property to resubmit. As things stand right now, the enforcement has kind of stayed moving forward with enforcement pending the outcome of this case. And yeah, so that's like, so if the board does find, decides to deny this request, essentially, again, enforcement would allow, 30 days to allow the applicants to file an appeal with the circuit court. And if they don't, then, again, an inspector would go out and survey the property and see if the non-compliant buildings are still there, and if that's the case, then they would be issuing a ticket. And I believe at this point, I think that's up to maybe $500. So,
and would they be allowed to then file a new use permit again?
Yes, they would be allowed to. Again, that would not cure the $500 ticket, and which would still have to be resolved. And yeah, I think we would like pause enforcement until it gets resolved again. But again, they're coming through the same, this would be like the third time they're coming through the same body, and kind of asking for the same thing. So, but yeah, that's as crazy as it sounds. Yes, they would have the opportunity to file yet another use permit.
Thank you, Mr. Hogan. Ms. Lindsay? Ms. Arthurs?
Since I was not on the board in August, what is different about this application compared to the last one? It seems like they might potentially be trying to move the shed to a different location.
Has there been any change to the location of the shed?
I believe it's been moved to but I don't
think it's been moved.
I think they're proposing moving it to the front yard.
No, it's always been in the front yard.
Yeah,
it is in the front yard.
Madam Chair.
Mr. Melnick?
So, my understanding is that they just given us new measurements.
Yes, I'm curious why this, if the shed is in the same location, why we have new measurements. Now this may be all moot, depending on where we're headed on this, whether we need this detail. Ms. Freshman?
Well, we'll proceed tonight, obviously, and I understand that the fines go up, but unless there's some way to prohibit this, it could go on indefinitely and still be a lot cheaper than taking the addition down. So we'll see, but it strikes me as a wrinkle, a more creative wrinkle than we've seen in past applications. And given that it's already existing, it doesn't give us a whole lot of options unless the ordinance or the county attorney can step in.
Ms. Arthurs, your hand is still up. Do you want to speak again? Okay.
No, sorry.
That's all right. Any other questions for staff? Yeah, I read the application as saying that nothing has changed other than the measurements, and I did pull the old application, and it looks like the same plat, the same drawings, just different measurement. And in fact, this measurement is, the last one was asking for 8 foot to the wall, and this one's asking for a 6.25 to the wall. So this is even more restricted. All right, there's no questions. I see Mr. Bepahani, are you here?
Good evening, board.
Good evening. There you are.
Yes.
Welcome.
I'm actually, my name is Aryan Hosseini. I'm the applicant's agent. I'm also her son. So I'll be speaking on behalf of my mother.
I see. Okay.
Yes.
I see. Okay. Let me just check. That was in the supplemental material.
It was.
Yeah. Got it. I see it. Thank you. Go ahead, please.
All right. So I'm not the greatest public speaker, and I got a quite lengthy statement. So here it goes. So good evening, board. My name is Aryan Hosseini. I'll be speaking on behalf of my mother. We believe that there are personal problems which the neighbors have with us, and somehow they see us unfit to live in this community. Based on the letters submitted by the neighbors, they're basically calling us criminals and saying that we perform unlawful activity, which is highly offensive. The letters of opposition contain false, misleading, and irrelevant information, all in hopes to paint a negative picture of us and to cloud the judgment of the board. During the entire BZA process, the neighbors point out to anything and everything just to deny us from a use permit. It's just me and my mother who live in the house. We have a couple of extra rooms that we rent just to get by. We operate within the limits of our homestay permit. This has been verified by the county enforcement staff as a result of neighbor complaint. We have a small detached garage which can barely accommodate our car, and we built a shed out of necessity and placed it out of everyone's way to the side of our house, at that time not knowing it's not in line with zoning regulations. The neighbors suggest that we take down our shed and use our garage for storage or rent a storage unit elsewhere. This is highly irrational solution since our property can accommodate a shed. Now I will provide some points as why a use permit should be approved. So number 1, health, safety, and the welfare of the neighborhood. The shed is placed behind a permitted fence, which is located outside the visual clearance triangle that the zoning ordinance has established. Unobstructed views are well present for the purposes of pedestrian and vehicle traffic. Clear sight lines for the purposes of situational awareness are well present to the school and are not impaired. Even without a fence and a shed in place, a view into your backyard from 24th Street does not benefit nor increase the visual clearance to the school or vehicle traffic on 24th Street from the cul-de-sac and vice versa. This is all evident and can be identified from the provided pictures. Number 2, by right placement. During the last BZA meeting, this critical detail was not discussed or even brought up for discussion. If the shed can't be placed on the requested location, where can that be allowed to place the shed that complies with the zoning ordinance? I have provided 2 plats. As I stated in the documents, I have provided a plat which details where the shed can be placed by right. Information on this plat has been verified by county staff. If a use permit is not approved, we are forced to resort to this extreme measure. By doing so, we have to tear through our front yard and we have to move the shed to the front of our house, which firstly would destroy the look of the cul-de-sac, secondly be prone to unforeseen problems, even though it's placement by right. If by right placement and zoning policies don't benefit us and the neighbors, it's only fair to be allowed an alternative to keep the shed where it is. No good comes out of by right placement. If the board were to deny us a permit, the permitted fence would remain in place and the shed would be moved to the proposed by right location. This surely doesn't resolve the neighbors' concerns. The neighbors have stated that this is a threat. This is most definitely not a threat. Simply after discussing the issue with county staff, it was advised that it's the only way where we can legally keep the shed. The neighbors have stated that they don't oppose by right placement, which further proves that their concerns regarding the health, safety, and aesthetics of the neighborhood are not legitimate. We believe that they most likely just want us to carry the financial burden of moving the shed. Lastly, grounds for compatibility. We live in a 60-plus-year-old neighborhood, which is fitted with all sorts of additions and structures. Even our directly adjacent neighbor is encroaching into the 25 feet setback. Additionally, very recently, an exact comparable shed structure with the same material and a 5 feet street setback on Mead Street, 500 feet away from us, received a use permit. These are all grounds for compatibility within the neighborhood. It would be unfair treatment of the board to provide a use permit to one neighbor and deny the other, while they match the same criteria. In conclusion, our shed is not a health and safety issue. If it was, the county staff would definitely note it in the staff report, especially since we're neighbored by a public school. And by right placement would not have been a possible option. The compatibility of the shed in regards to footprint and setback is clearly evident. In our opinion, it really boils down to aesthetics, and we have provided a concealment plan to address that issue. Although the opinion and the feedback of all neighbors are critically important, we really hope that the opposing neighbors are not the decision makers of our case. We also believe that the process should be inclusive to all and should cater to everyone's problems, misfortune, and be impartial to everyone. Thank you, board.
Thank you, Mr. Azande. I want to assure you that, I'm sorry. I want to assure you that our decisions are made on the zoning ordinance, and those are the only factors that we take into account. If that concludes your statement, I will ask if there are any speakers.
Yes, there are 3 speakers signed up. The first one is Allegra.
Madam Chair, could I ask a question of the applicant first?
Certainly.
Is there a reason why I'm looking at the plat that shows the by right placement of the shed?
Yes.
And if you had to move it, is there a reason why, or have you explored with county staff why it's not moved to the back corner of your property, the corner, not the garage corner, but the other rear corner, where it is less visible and intrusive, but still within your property line?
There's nowhere else on the property that I can accommodate the shed. I have spoken with all the county staffs, and this is the only option. It's either I take it down or I move the shed to the by right location. That's the only 2 options that I have.
But you have your by right location in your backyard.
Well, no, there's a deck that's placed over there, and anywhere else, if I go in the backyard, I'll be encroaching the rear setback or side setback. Sorry.
But you could remove your deck and place your shed there.
Well, that would be just, the financial burden of taking off the deck and then relocating the building. We have to bring building movers, and then we have to dispose of all the deck material. So that's just not, feasible for us. So.
But I would, Madam Chair, I would just make the point to the applicant that if the shed is in the current location about which there's a lot of dispute, was put there without permission, that was a conscious choice on your part. And now what's happening is that some of the regulations are being raised by the county and by the neighbors. And so we're just looking at it from the standpoint of what options there might be. And that's why I was suggesting, and why the chair was also suggesting, that the rear yard, might be a feasibility. Yes, you're incurring additional costs, but that's in part because your original structure was not permitted. Had you gone through the process, it wouldn't have been permitted in the first place, and we wouldn't have this difficulty.
That is completely understandable, yes. So, but at this time, this is what we're requesting. We just hope that it gets approved. If not, we have to bring it to the front location. So,
Mr. Hogan, do you have a speaker list, or do you want to call some speakers? Here it is.
The first is Allegra Sensening.
All right, Ms. Sensenning, are you with us?
I'm right here.
All right, do you have your camera on?
I do.
All right, let me see if I can find you. I don't, does anybody else see her?
No.
Okay. Well, I have my camera on. I can see
There
Okay,
you go.
just came
We
in.
got you.
lower. Okay, good. Thank you.
Could you tell us where you live?
Yes, it's in my statement if you'd like me to begin.
Where, we have your statement?
I submitted a formal written statement, but then I also have remarks I'm prepared to read.
Let me, we're looking for your formal statement.
I didn't hear the, I didn't hear Mr. Hogan indicate it, but I had emailed
Yeah.
several weeks ago.
No, yeah, we do have that. We have an email from March 31st. It's at the end of the supplemental materials
At the end of the supplemental materials. Thank you.
submitted.
I see it. Yes, it's at the end of the supplemental materials. Go ahead, Ms. Sensing.
Okay, thank you very much.
Reset the timer.
Wait 1 second. I got to find my notes.
Take your time.
Good evening. My name is Allegra Senseneg. My husband and I reside at 2337 South Ode Street. We oppose the permit requested and we support the neighborhood objections already on record and dating to last summer. In August 2020, the BZA denied approval of a deck, gazebo, and shed already constructed on this property. While some of the structures appear to have been removed, the shed, unchanged, is still there. How does this structure already denied come back before the BZA? Enforcement, to include ticketing and fines, had been underway for months. The board ruled in August the structure is not compatible with development in the surrounding neighborhood, and the overall footprint size and placement are not similar to comparable structures on other properties surrounding the lot. Board members noted the structure is not similar in character to others in the immediate area, and that this is so far away from being an approvable project, its denial is not a tough call. How has any of this changed? Recommendations are now provided on a structure that is visually unchanged. Have zoning officials verified the dimensions and setback? Applicant's statement about the structure, "We are determined to keep it one way or another," strikes us as a threat. Implied is that the homeowner will seek to move this oversized structure to a spot that degrades the neighborhood appearance and, in the applicant's words, totally destroys the look of the cul-de-sac. Applicant's example of an exact comparable shed, unquote, recently approved on South Mead Street is not valid on several counts. Applicant's structure is reported to be 312 square feet. The Mead Street shed is considerably smaller at 128 square feet, and the setback issues are with Arlington Ridge Road, not any adjacent property. Further, the Mead Street shed is obscured by foliage and does not affect sightlines at an elementary school. And I also want to emphasize neighborhood outreach. I know the applicant has mention of it, but I do feel that representatives of Oak Ridge Elementary School have a stake here and should be heard from. Lastly, applicant emphasizes the need for storage space. We offer, with respect, there is a solution available that provides both storage for the homeowner and compliance with zoning requirements. Build a smaller shed or rent some off-site storage. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Sensing. Mr. Hogan, the next speaker is Mr. Howe.
Yes, good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Howe.
Good evening. So tonight I'm speaking on behalf of myself, my wife, and the residents and owners of 2333 South Ode Street, Leo Quillisi and Aaron Anderson Quillisi.
What is your address?
My address is 2344 South Ode Street.
344. Thank you.
So I live across the street from the subject property. We oppose the after-the-fact use permit requested here. We submitted written comments on the application, and we'll share a few points with you here now. First, the relief requested today was considered and denied by this board on August 12, 2020. None of the material facts have changed, except the shed is now 5 feet longer and 244 days have passed since the August decision. Virginia law gives the applicant an opportunity to appeal a board decision. The applicant did not appeal. A second application like this only erodes fairness for all stakeholders and sets a harmful precedent. And second, the shed and privacy fence continue to present a public safety risk by reducing sight lines in front of Oak Ridge Elementary School. It is a busy area full of children, parents, pedestrians, school staff, school buses, and other vehicles. Third, the shed and the privacy fence are unique in the neighborhood. Because their size and placement violate the zoning ordinance, no other examples exist. Fourth, alternative storage options are available. One example is the Cube Smart Self-Storage, which is only 2 miles away. And last, the applicant has shown a pattern of disregard toward the zoning ordinance and other laws. Stop work orders were issued during the extensive remodel of the residence. Building permits and use permits were not obtained before construction of the gazebo, deck, shed, and privacy fence. The 6-foot privacy fence in the front yard violates section 326A of the ordinance. And the applicant operates a commercial Airbnb business that is not incidental or subordinate to the principal use, a single-family home, by advertising 6 bedrooms in a 1-story, 1,800 square foot home. We urge you to deny the permit. And I also want to make a note of the proposed placement of the shed by the applicant. It's not clear that the applicant is able to meet the clearance requirement between the main residence and the proposed placement of the shed. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Howe. The next person I have is Louis Koresh. Are you with us this evening?
Yes, I am. Sorry, I can see my daughter has placed some kind of thing behind me, but you can see me anyway, so I apologize for that.
What is your address, Mr. Koresh?
It's 2334 South Ode Street.
Thank you.
I'm the owner with my wife, Maria Guadalupe Morones Lara. So I'm speaking on behalf of her as well.
Go ahead.
I have the same objections that were expressed last August before this board. Nothing has changed. The shed is not compatible with the surrounding properties in the neighborhood. It's excessively large. It's highly visible from all directions. Other structures in the neighborhood that might be similar in size are principally garages at the end of driveways or storage sheds at the back of property that are mostly hidden from view. There is nothing that compares to this shed. There's no hardship, there's no necessity, and there's nothing unique about this corner lot. There's plenty of space on the lot for storage. There's a freestanding garage. There's a basement in this house. The owner has already constructed a mammoth deck in the back, which itself may not be compliant and may need to be reviewed. Which is, as I believe, to be the main reason why, in response to one of the members, the applicant indicated that could not move the shed to another place in the back. In my mind, questions are raised about good faith on the part of the applicant. This shed is existing construction only because the applicant constructed it. As others that have spoken have noted, the owner has previously ignored or violated other codes and ordinances. The owner asserts the shed does not facilitate any sort of change to the use of the property, nor any increase in the density of occupying persons, nor any changes to the normal activities of a family. But in fact, if this house was actually being used as only a single family dwelling, you can't imagine why you would need such a large storage structure, but it's not. It's being used to rent, and this is public knowledge on Airbnb, up to 6 bedrooms in this small home. So for these reasons, the board should deny the application, and in my view, order the shed and the non-compliant fence to be removed. What we heard Mr. Hogan say, that they could do this indefinitely, just cannot possibly be correct. And enforcement and fines should not be paused during this kind of process. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Koresh. All right. Any questions for the applicants? If there are no, I have a question for Mr. Hogan. One of the speakers raised a question about the proposed by right placement of the shed. Is there a separation requirement between the shed and the front of the house?
Yes, there is. And it's 8 feet. Unless the footprint is greater than, I think, 650 square feet in the R10 district, in which case it's a 15-foot separation from the main dwelling.
So would you agree that the
Madam Chair, may I clarify?
Mr. Rissy, good evening. Again.
Yes. The structure that is before you tonight has been brought to us as an accessory structure. Accessory structures do not have the separation requirement that Mr. Hogan is talking about. That is specifically for accessory buildings, which are fastened to a foundation, have walls and a roof. So the structure, the accessory structure, would not have a separation requirement.
Has no separation requirement.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Rissy.
Yes.
All right.
Thanks, Steve.
Good to have a backup.
Right.
If there's no further questions from staff or the applicant, the discussion is with the board.
Madam Chair.
Mr. Melnick?
So I just don't see anything different or materially different in here that would cause me to reach a different decision than the BZA reached back in August. I mean, it seems, I'm reading that staff thinks that it's just more accurate measurement, about dimensions and whatnot, but, that the shed itself hasn't moved since August. And so basically it's the same thing, just different numbers as far as, how big it is. And it appears to be, and along with that, along with our new numbers, it looks like it's actually closer. They're requiring less of a setback. So, they're even encroaching more. So I'm just not seeing anything that would lead me to make a different decision that was made in August.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Melnick. Ms. Freshman?
I agree with Mr. Melnick. I was prepared to make a motion, but I would also like to just reiterate my concerns about the boomerang nature of this and the fact that the shed could stay there indefinitely if the system is, in my view, misused. And I think that if it is denied again, which I would recommend, then I believe the applicant has the option for an appeal. And, if they feel that they have a case, they should do that. And I am prepared to make a motion if you're ready.
Go ahead, Ms. Freshman.
I move the Board of Zoning Appeals approve the attached proposed resolution denying the use permit V-11644-21-UP2.
Is there a second?
I second.
Motion made by Ms. Freshman, seconded by Ms. Arthurs. Any further discussion? I will call the roll. Mr. Melnick?
Aye.
Ms. Freshman?
Aye.
Ms. Arthurs?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion to deny is adopted. The use permit is denied. It gives us no pleasure to deny applications, but I don't believe that this application meets the criteria that is in the law and that we're given to follow. Mr. Hogan, I believe that is our last case.
That is the last case. However, there are minutes for 2 previous meetings to be approved, February 24th and March 10th.
Ms. Freshman?
I can move them together or separately as you wish.
Together's fine.
I move approval of the minutes of February 24, 2021 and March 10, 2021.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Yeah, Mr. Melnick, you were at both meetings, yes. Actually,
do we need to separate them?
I
Because
think we're going to have to, let's bifurcate that motion.
Can I just rescind it? Where's Robert? Robert's rules.
Go, just start again.
Okay. Forget what I just said. I move approval of the February 24, 2021 minutes.
And Mr. Melnick?
I'll second.
All right. Motion made by Ms. Freshman, seconded by Mr. Melnick. I will call the roll. Mr. Melnick?
Aye.
Ms. Freshman?
Aye.
Ms. Arthurs, you're abstaining?
Yes.
And chair votes aye. So the motion to pass the minutes carries 3-0-1 with Ms. Arthurs abstaining. Okay, next set.
I move approval of the March, please change the slide. Is it the 10th? Yeah, thank you. March 10th, 2021 minutes.
I second.
Motion made by Ms. Freshman, seconded by Ms. Arthurs. I will call the roll. Mr. Melnick?
Aye.
Ms. Freshman?
Aye.
Ms. Arthur?
Aye.
Chair votes aye. Motion to adopt the minutes carries 4-0. Mr. Hogan, do you have anything else for us?
That is all we have on the formal agenda.
All right.
Bye, Stephen.
I gotta say, the agenda having been completed, this meeting is adjourned.